All right, let's continue on here in this chapter of a political opinion and political participation, political parties. Okay, we're going to resume on slide number 7. Okay, again, we're still talking about worldview. And again, to reiterate, everyone has one. And the way you understand a worldview and why you see the world a certain way, why you have certain political opinions that you have, is based on what your ultimate concern is. What is ultimate, okay? And through that ultimate concern, that's how you view the world. That determines what you see, what you don't see, what you think is good, what you think is bad, what you think is just, what you think is unjust, things like that, okay? So I'm going to continue on and with the slide here. So take the worldview of Marxism. Okay, Marxism is the worldview that drove Soviet communism, right, from the Russian Revolution of 1971, or 1917 rather, 1917 until 1991 with the collapse of the Soviet Union, but it's still there. It's still driving China, and in fact, what is it? I've heard, was it 1/5 of the world is driven by Marxism, okay? And basically what is ultimate in that system is matter. Okay, matter. Again, it's a very naturalistic worldview. Okay, there is no God, there is nothing supernatural. The only thing that's really eternal and the thing that's really ultimate is matter, stuff, okay? Or we would say property. And so how Marxists view the world is simply a clash between the haves and the have-nots, and the attempt of the have-nots to get what the haves have, okay, to redistribute what the dominant class, in this case economic class, has, and distribute it to those that don't have as much, okay? And that's what drove Soviet communism. That's what drove, Chinese communism. Again, I'm not going to get into this too deeply. If this were international relations, I would, okay? If this seems like, abstract, like, yeah, whatever, okay? Socialism, okay? Bernie Sanders, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, okay, individuals like that, politicians like that in our country right now, embrace a form of this, okay, a form of, they think that justice is based on redistributing wealth from one class to another class, okay? There's also something called cultural Marxism that is very much a part of America today, and that is basically transferring the principles of Marxism, this class struggle between the haves and the have-nots economically, to culturally, okay? So basically the world is divided between oppressed and oppressor, okay, in that logic, okay? There's only two kinds of people. You either are an oppressor or the oppressed. And so they'll look at groups that have been either marginalized or, in their opinion, again, it's very much postmodern. It's a rejection of capital T truth. It's just small t truth. So truth is based on one's class, one's gender, one's race, one's sexual orientation, okay? And if you're of those groups and you are oppressed, you must work to take from the oppressor and take it for yourself, okay? So there's actually a form of the logic of this is something called critical theory, okay? And again, you don't have to remember all this. I'm just kind of giving you some background. And basically, it sees that humanity is based on two different groups of people, the oppressed and the oppressor. And so the fundamental problem in the world is oppression by a dominant class upon a marginalized class, okay? That's the fundamental problem. So how do you fix it? How do you fix the world in their thinking? Okay, again, it's a very materialistic worldview, okay, without any reference of anything higher than that. So it thinks, critical theory or cultural Marxism thinks that you fix the world through social justice. If you can get social justice, if we can all be social activism, get involved in kind of some sort of minor revolution to break down the current dominant group and allow the oppressed group to gain power over it, that's how you fix the world. Okay, is that going on right now? Sure. The present sexual revolution embraces that a lot, okay? Forms of cultural Marxism are all over the place. But anyway, I'm not going to belabor that. But what's another worldview? It's something called historicism, which I've talked before a little bit about, but this was embraced by individuals like Woodrow Wilson, individuals like Theodore Roosevelt, that basically what is ultimate is historical progress. And the fact that newest is truest, latest is greatest. So the newest expressions of rationalism, the newest expressions of science. My iPhone, what is this? I think it's an iPhone 11, is better than an iPhone 10, which is better than an iPhone 9, which is better than an iPhone 8, and so on and so forth, okay? Technologically, yes, that works, okay? But when you start looking, but the problem with what historicism and historical progress, the problem with it is this, and again, this is what many of the progressives like Woodrow Wilson embraced. So the founding generation of 1776, Declaration of Independence, and even the Constitution of 1787 is passé, is old-fashioned, is old hat. It doesn't apply to a modern world, okay? So you can kind of see how that expression works itself out in public policy and political opinion, okay? And then finally, progressivism, which I've talked about a little bit. But again, because of historical progress, newest is truest, latest is greatest, individuals that are progressive, okay, a Hillary Clinton, an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a Bernie Sanders, a Woodrow Wilson, okay? They think that basically you can achieve progress. Okay, human progress is the most important thing. And what humans are doing today is far more important than what they did yesterday or last year or a decade ago or 100 years ago. And so they see progress through government, okay? You can create prosperity. You can create a better future for Americans or any society through government, okay? So they're not going to see a limited form of government as important. They're going to see a greatly expanded government, okay? So anyway, just trying to show you these. And again, if you have any questions about this, please reach out to me. We'd love to discuss that. Again, if we were in a live class, we could talk about this more in depth, okay? Let's move on to slide number 8. Excuse me, I am dry right now. It's a hot day. So slide number 8 talks about why we get left wing or right wing, okay? The political left, the political right. Maybe you've heard that term before. That came from the French Revolution. And so basically during the French Revolution in the 1789, 1793, 94, that idea, the representatives who sat on the right side of the legislative assembly were supporters of the aristocracy and the monarchy, okay? So they wanted to preserve what had been, okay? The people who sat on the left side of the assembly chamber, they opposed the old order, okay? And they supported some form of disruption and the interests of the rising merchant class, okay? Or maybe that what we consider today the have-nots, okay? So the peasants didn't vote, they weren't represented in the assembly, okay? So, so basically we get right wing, okay? Is basically support of capitalism, the support of business, okay? Left wing is typically support for socialism, communism, the rights of the downtrodden, okay? But again, what's interesting is, but the Republican Party today, which tends to be more of right-leaning, okay, was the party for the slaves. In fact, it was created for the main reason why the Republican Party was created was to combat slavery, okay, which is interesting today because generally those on the left and those that are Democrats tend to see their party as the champion of African Americans when all along the Republican Party basically rose to do that. But anyway, be that as it may, that's the origins of right and left, okay? And so if you go to slide number 9, you can see this is a political wheel. This might help you, okay? You can see the various elements of the spectrum, okay? If you go to the very top, you see tyranny. What's tyranny? Total government control. What's the exact opposite of total government control? The bottom there in the yellow, anarchy, okay? Are we seeing anarchy in America? Yeah. There are segments of, as I record this in Seattle, it was called CHAZ, which is what Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. I think it's been called CHOP now. I forget the acronym. But anyway, this idea that, hey, we don't want police. We basically don't want government. We're just basically ruling ourselves without any form of external governmental control. Okay, that would be an example of anarchy. Okay. If you look in the middle there, if you look at, on the left in the middle, liberal, okay, that's more of your liberal party, okay? These are more, at least today's version of it, it tends to emphasize liberal meaning free. We don't want government control of our behavior. We don't want government control of social issues. Leave our sexuality alone, right? Leave our view of marriage alone. We want to decide for ourselves what it is without any government interference. And yet, ironically, liberals want the government to get involved, okay, in some form of economic disparities to bring about some sort of equality, okay? Go to the right side, okay? It's conservative, okay? What's a conservative? A conservative believes that there are certain traditions, practices, values, morals that are true for all time, and that there's a continuity from the past to the present to the future. That in order to do life in the present, and in order to move forward in the future to the greatest degree of human flourishing, there are certain principles, practices, transcendent principles that are true for all time, and we must maintain a continuity with that, okay? Whereas liberals they embrace more of a disruption. Sometimes they see the past as the enemy. Sometimes they see past traditions and customs and value systems and beliefs as the enemy because it hinders progress. But then that begs the question, what is progress and what does it look like? And how would you know it if you got there? And if you got there, would you be content? Okay, but again, that's a whole other issue. And then you can look at some of these other various areas of that, and you can see the explanations there. But I thought that might be helpful for you as you try to kind of work through what is my political, belief, what is my political ideology. Again, to me, the easiest way to think it through is everyone has a worldview. There is always something ultimate that you tend to give your allegiance to. Okay, and when I'm saying this, I'm not sorry. You might say, well, I'm not a religious person. That's not what I'm talking about. Okay, but what I'm talking about, there is something ultimate in your life. Okay, there is something ultimate that drives how you see the world. Okay, and again, don't limit it to, well, that's just a religious thing. It applies to it applies to scientists who maybe reject God and are naturalists, or individuals that are scientists who embrace scientism, that science is the ultimate authority. Okay, in other words, there's always some ultimate authority. The modern world we live in, even the concept of modernity in general. What's modernity? The ability to basically see the world through scientific rationalism. If science can see it, discover it, figure it out, it's true. If science can't figure it out and understand it, then it's either not true or it's your personal opinion. Okay, that's modernity. I'm not saying you have to agree with it, but that's the world in which we live. Modernity is this: we get our truth from science, we get our meaning from the market. Okay, and that drives how a lot of people do life. But then that begs the question: is that all there is, or is there something more? But I'll leave it at that. Okay, so I'm gonna end here, and we'll begin with slide number 11 next.